past life experiences, seeing the DNA, seeing the universal phenomena, becoming one with everything, experiencing this general, seeing the divine, communicating with divine archetypes from different cultures, experiencing communication with archetypes from different cultures. This is all the transpersonal realm. This all belongs to the transpersonal realm. But one very interesting thing about this realm is that people who have no background with some type of spirituality can experience communication or identification with these archetypes. And this is very interesting. So this all belongs to this realm. The supracosmic void, the going beyond self, experiencing emptiness, is also part of it. Like so, yeah. This is very broad. This realm is basically the broadest. And so basically, yeah, the idea about this cartography of the mind is that our mind comes as a sort of iceberg. The biographical thing is just the tip of the iceberg, and then it has all this depth. Yeah, okay, so we can finish now here, and let's have question and answers. How much time do you have for questions and answers?
About 20 minutes.
About 20 minutes, okay.
Thank you, Angel. So who'd like to start? Go ahead, ladies first.
What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. You were talking about how we only are using a fraction of mind to limit our ego and keep our ego contained. Do you suppose that the next level of evolution will be to reach more of that and having a lot more people reaching the state and staying in it?
Okay. There's obviously this division between, because there's one very young researcher, and he's done a lot of psilocybin research on MRI, this British guy, Harris, and he has proposed interesting things in his papers, that basically there is this thing called primary consciousness, and this thing called secondary consciousness. And the secondary consciousness, he says, is the metacognitive ego, that is in charge for representing the world on outside as much as objective as possible, so you can function with it, right? And then there's the deeper part, which is the hyper-representational part, the magical thinking, the imaginational part, which is the primary consciousness, which is very entropic, and they seem to be at odds. Like when you are in the secondary consciousness, metacognitive ego, you suppress. Like basically the brain suppresses this other part, so you can function well. Now, I guess the goal of every spiritual practice, and I'm getting the impression that the goal of every spiritual practice is to establish a network, like a neural network, between these two layers of the brain. It's almost like we don't have functional neural network between the two parts. So we cannot go into that part by will, right? Like I can recognize faces by will. I can control my body by will. I have control of many things by will in my secondary consciousness. But for some reason, like, we cannot go to these deeper parts of the brain. It's just like our neural network of who we are, what we are, is mostly built on the neural cortex. And I think in depression, like Robin Carter Harris says that very often in depression, this neural network becomes very rigid. And it just becomes self-perpetuating. So they had a lot of cases when psilocybin would help people go out of depression. And the reason why is because it would break through this neural programming and take you deeper into the primary consciousness. And the primary consciousness is hyper-representational. It will just help you rewire your brain. So we need to rewire our brains, rewire this whole functioning, including addiction, everything. So the way meditation or any way, like all these states can help with this kind of problems is by helping the brain to rewire. And with the brain, obviously, because it wants to go to these states, it wants to. That's why it's holotropic. That's why it just so readily accepts to the breathing or to any kind of process the holotropic mechanism gets activated. It's almost as if your brain wants to. And what Groff also says is that in sessions they found out that there is this thing called inner radar. So it's just starts to heal, like the psychiatrist doesn't have to go and say, oh, now tell me about your mother. Let's focus there. And now you tell me about there. It doesn't have to do that. There is this inner radar of the brain that just works with whatever needs to be worked on. It wants to work on it in a way. It wants to solve everything. It wants to create this part, this sort of neural flexibility. Like our brains want to be able to leave one type of existence, of idea of self, and go to another type, and another type, and another type. Our brains wants to be multi-representational.
Another, maybe a bit, it's not really a political question. Would you argue, or would he argue, Groth argue, that the fact that we are in this society where you have to divide, divide the potentials by, for example, one is an electrician, the other one has to play the piano, this guy has only got to fabricate the hammers, etc. Do you think this Arbeitsteilige Gesellschaft, as we call it in German, shared work, shared specific, this is actually perverting our holistic capacities, and that so by means of advancing as a society in a capitalist sense and raising our GDP, we're actually depraving ourselves of the sheer capacity that our brain would have when we would allow people to do more, and not just to specialize in certain areas. I mean, this is very much of a political question.
Well, in one of his books, he definitely says that if we want to survive as human species, we definitely need to establish contact with these deeper parts. And if he actually finds parallels between existence of concentration camps, existence of murders, rapes, all this with basically these rigid social structures that are disabling us to go through these deep healings, reestablish our connection with the nature, and redefine ourselves, reset ourselves. Now, if that is bad or good, he doesn't really talk about this in particular. I guess because he's not a sociologist. He's basically a psychiatrist, so he can't go in that direction. But he's definitely proposing that we should start recultivating the relationship with the states instead of treating them as everything that's outside this working, planning type of self.
It's therefore fascinating because a shareholder value-driven society, as we have it in the capitalist nations, is definitely not interested in people discovering what you now said, I think, because they just want the bit of more profit and the bit of more sales every year, and that's what you achieve when you employ people in their specialized paradigms.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, it's good.
Matt?
I think I agree with you, but I would switch. I would say it's because we're completely controlled by our mind and we're not anymore in touch with our subconscious that we are creating that society. I think it's something that has been very gradual, and if you read Eckhart Tolle, that's exactly what he's saying. And I like, he has a sentence, I don't know if it's from him or somebody else, but he said, the mind is a very good servant, but it's a very bad master. And he said the mind is something extremely powerful, the intellect, the cognitive capabilities, the mental, when you use it. But the choice, the life that you want, the society that you want to create shall come from the heart, from the subconscious. And then the mind, we can use it, wow, it's great, you're extremely good in mathematics, in business, whatever. And then you implement it with the mind. But what I feel in our society, is also what you're saying, is that we're not anymore able to reconnect the subconscious, that I would say the soul, the heart, with the mind.
He's like the guy from The Power of Now.
Yes, exactly. And it's interesting because when you read more, I would say, esoteric book, which has again said this, I don't know how to pronounce it in English, he said that our initial state, the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, are not something separated. It's just the same unit. And I think, I don't know what happened, but we just have disconnected both. And now we need to go and watch movies such as Avatar or Walt Disney or whatever to reconnect for 1 hour for that. We have a smile like this, and then it's over. We're back to, I mean, you're right. You open the TV, what do you see? Soccer and shares. What the hell, you know? It's wars and everything, and everybody said, no, it's all right, our society is great. And I'm not saying it's bad entirely, we're doing a fantastic thing in our society. But it's true that
it's not about being critical of what is good, of course. It's just that we seem to have lost this relationship with parts of ourselves that they are there for some kind of reason, and so we live a little bit of a split, We live a split life. We live a separate life. The nature, the uncontrollable, equals the uncontrollable parts of ourselves, right? So we need to control them because they might become terrible, and then we might. So it's all kind of
Well, so we're talking about how accepting and understanding non-ordinary states of consciousness might be able to help society. How exactly do you see that happening? Let's say we wanted to start moving towards that accepting and understanding. Are there other things that need to change at the same time for the benefits of accepting non-ordinary states of consciousness? Are there other things that need to happen at the same time for those benefits to be felt?
Actually, I don't know. I don't really know how the society should build this acceptance towards non-ordinary states. I think simply by educating ourselves that these parts of the mind belong to us. Like we all have these parts of our psyche that earn to be healed, that earn to come back to wholeness. I think from the earliest part of our existence, even when we're single-cell organisms and we start dividing, it seems like there is something that starts representing this world. So basically, I will go to the to the idealist side that everything we experience is phenomenology, that everything is phenomenology. But in a way, at least our brains or our minds have ways to represent everything. Now I see the stable, so represents the stable as a combination of color, shape, emotion, and so we have a neural network that represents everything. Now it's very interesting in autism, for example, they cannot exactly represent properly people's faces. They cannot empathize with people. It's foreign. They don't really understand. And what we get from the non-ordinary states of consciousness is that people can actually experience identification with other people. The growth calls a dual unity. We can experience identification with other animals. We can experience us like shapeshifting, becoming that kind of animal, whether it's holotropic network or whether it's like so basically our representation of what we are stop being so rigid. And so I think we all slowly, like being stuck into this whole information overload, have been slowly losing our ability to fully represent the otherness of people and animals, etc. And this is what we lose the most from losing our contact with these deeper hyper-representational states. Because deep inside, everything we represent, I represent Lynn, I represent everybody here. The only reason why I can understand your face and what does it mean is because deep inside, there is some kind of assumption of what is it like to be you. This is very interesting, and it's only revealed in non-ordinary states when we lose this very rigid representation of ourselves and we start experiencing feeling of oneness with other people or other beings. And this basically tells us that on a deeper level of the mind, we have some kind of feeling of what is it like to be you. Doesn't mean that that's really what you are, but this is what my feeling about you is. And this is how I can empathize. The reason why I empathize with whatever I see is because there is this representation, and I have a feeling about it. I have a feeling what would it be like, some kind of deeper feeling. This is the wholeness. This is the holotropic mind of moving towards wholeness. Like calls you, like call the primary consciousness, calling the secondary consciousness, and informing it. Now look at the Asperger people, like people who are autistic. They have a full knowledge of what's going on, just like everybody, but they have more difficulty to reach to that what is it like to be you state.
But it's also there, the neurologists have this discovered the spot where this might happen. They call it the mirror neurons.
Yes,
At least
yes, the mirror neurons, but right, so it seems to be a lot about, we still don't know what happens when people under ayahuasca experience identification with an animal or with another being or with another person. We don't know whether it's the mirror neurons that fire. We don't know what part of us fires up, but ability for empathy, I think, is ultimately tied up, from what I see, our ability for empathy is tied up to us experiencing oneness with all the representations we have. You know, when somebody experiences oneness with the whole universe, it doesn't mean that he really experiences oneness with the universe. It's a representation of the mind. Like mind works with representation, with phenomenology. And all these things are us. Right? My representation of you is me. It's my mind making a creation of what is you. And ultimately that's me. And I can experience oneness with what is me. Why I don't do that? Why I don't experience oneness with what is me? You know, it doesn't have to be oneness with this world, but we certainly know that everything that arises within this mind is me. Yes.
What is interesting is, what is really with what you said. First, we have a sentence in French. I mean, and I think it's in any country of the world. We say, you know, when you want to solve a problem, we say, please try to see the issue from the point of view of the other person.
Right.
And we know that when we do this, it actually really helps to solve an issue, because then we start, okay, maybe that person see this like this, and so there's a connection to this thing. The second thing is, I think in life, when we are in the comfort zone, in the average, it's very hard to reach what you're doing. But when we experience extreme, then we can learn lesson. For example, if you see a little girl, a little child, or somebody crying in the street, then you feel the connection. Then you see somebody crying, you see somebody sad, and you're becoming sad, because I think there's something in us that is telling us we are the same, we're together. So you see somebody very sad, and you're getting sad. You could say, yes, it's because I'm a nice person. Maybe it's also because at the end of the day we're the same. And we know that if a person is sad and is crying, there's probably a tiny part of us that is crying. And the other experience is, maybe we can experience oneness when we are in a state of pure love. You know, this is what we experience when we meet a woman, or for you meet a man, or when we have a child. How many parents say that the child is part of them, you know? And probably life is trying to teach us back the law of universe through extreme experience that we don't recognize when we're just in the daily life, you know.
I'll respond to that and then wrap it up.
No, it was a good comment. So I pretty much to wrap it up.
Where do you see this going in the future? We really are just down to a minute.
What do I see going in the future? Well, I think just if this becomes part of our education, I think it's going to be good. Just that these states have some kind of potential, and they can help us become better people and understand each other better. I think we wouldn't be so afraid of them. We wouldn't be so afraid to leave our rigid neural net, and maybe we'll be more open towards ways to reset.
And that starts with people like you giving presentations like this, and other people's becoming maybe unafraid or more brave to share their own experiences and what they've been taught as well.
Right, through meditation or through any other means. I mean, of course, I think we should be careful when we, engage in any kind of states, northern states. I think there should be certainly guidance into this process, because it's not a process without dangers. So, this is one of the reasons why all these cultures have had teachers and shamans who were proficient in these states. And so I think if we decide, we should definitely go for to find a good teacher and just go on a journey of self-discovery.
Okay, thanks.